It's afterwards is what they don't want.
Right.
They don't want all that.
The one complaint that I could give was...
What?
and I can't really, I'm not one to complain, but the one thing that I do question is, you know, having sportsmanship is really popular among any athletic, you know, sport. And if you are face to face with somebody and you're about to go head to head with them in a fight, like MMA fighting or UFC, you know, the least you could do is kind of put that aside and portray yourself in a way that, I mean, everybody's watching you. These are on videos. People are going to see them all over the place, and we're going to come to the show and talk about it. You know, whenever I saw the trainer and his student fight, after the fight, I watched how they conducted themselves, and I just really, I didn't.
Did you feel bad for both of them?
I felt terrible. I felt almost embarrassed for the fight.
Yeah, and
because of the way they conducted themselves.
I want to
There were
clarify
some
too.
situations in that with the groin shot in there, just some things happened.
It
It just was a weird fight.
Yeah, and I want to clarify too. It's not like Shannon coming in and challenging Steve or you or something. He was very shortly trained at their gym for just a little bit, so it's not like he was really his primary trainer.
And Adam last week
because
wasn't.
I don't want anybody out there to think that's
it wasn't like one of those bad martial arts.
That's right, a normal thing that you fight your trainers or anything, but.
All right, let's move on, guys.
Damn, AJ, we're going to fight in your next show, too.
There you go. So you guys can sell some tickets.
In the 8th fight of the night,
I'm not going down and wait.
was a heavyweight MMA event with Terrell Brown. He defeated Justin Jimenez. That was due to referee stoppage during unanswered ground and pound in the second round.
That was two tough guys. Steve, we're talking about the heavyweights, Terrell Brown and Justin Jimenez. I know that Jimenez had him in an armbar, and Terrell picked all 220 pounds up of him and still slammed him while he was in that armbar. And I thought, man, that's a strong kid there. I mean,
He did it fairly easily.
he did it fairly easily. And Jimenez is a big, strong kid.
Terrell was pretty athletic. I've never seen him fight before, but that was an athletic big man.
And he's coming down to he was at 215, I think, that night, or 220, and he's coming down to 205. He wasn't real particularly tall, and he isn't real ripped up or anything.
No.
He doesn't look that.
But his cardio wasn't that bad. He hung pretty good.
What schools did they represent?
Justin Jimenez is out of the boxing gym in Florida, and he trains with Dan Schaefer-Cutter. And actually, he had a lot more fights going into that. And then Terrell is out of the hit squad, and he had one fight previously.
Okay.
And that was real recently, too. So there's some, I think he's someone they want to move into a couple quick fights. And they both look good, and Jimenez hung in there. I mean, when the referee took a look at his cut, and after he wasn't going his way, he could have easily stopped. And he went right back out there. And he went out there and still, fought the rest of that fight as far as he could, and that's what impressed me about him.
In the 9th fight of the night at 170 pounds, the 10th ranked amateur fighter, I should say the ground and pound 10th ranked amateur fighter, Gene Bryan from Andres MMA, was defeated by stand your ground fighter Michael Simon in the first round due to referee stoppage for unanswered ground and pound attack.
That was an upset, yeah.
Yeah, and so now, due to our rules, now ranked number 10 at the 170 pounds is Mike Simon. We're going to have him on the show later.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah,
That was a good stoppage now for the referee.
Yeah, Gene,
It
they
was.
said Gene had just wore himself out with a guillotine attempt, and then Michael was able to reverse some pound.
Mike was extremely aggressive in that fight, and it really paid off for him. He needed to be.
Yeah, that was an upset. We respect Michael, but we all thought that Gene was going to come out on top of that.
He's so big at that weight class, he trains with quality
And
trainers.
watching him fight Smock and
Yeah, he was tough.
and Cody West, and
In the 10th fight of the night, second to last, second to last fight of the night, fighting at 185 pounds, undefeated, am I right? Mark the Mutant McLean defeated Mike Richter by tap out due to guillotine choke in the first round. The Mutant looked incredible. He owned that fight.
these are two guys that lost their opponents on the way to the fights. Mark's guy, I guess, kind of got banned by a whole bunch of promoters or whatever for breaking free of his gym the night of the fight, not telling his trainers, and coming out with. They became the syndicate, and there was a whole bunch of them, and they started fights in the crowd somewhere. And
Who was his original opponent?
that was going to be Brian the Beast Roberts, out of Joplin area.
Okay, I don't know.
And then he was an undefeated fighter. And then Richter was supposed to fight Don Remmer, who put a nail knuckle about 2-3 days as a carpenter before the fight, and had a big,
Dreaded last minute injury.
he had a big, kid sold 40 tickets, had a big cast, first fight, all his buddies were coming, and they all still wanted to come. They didn't get back any tickets. So I told him you could fight whenever the doctor says you can.
Yeah, and healed up.
Because the guy who sells 40 tickets, gets hurt, and then doesn't, still wants to, they all want to come to the fights. As a promoter, I loved him.
Very
But
cool.
the kid's real game, and he's itching to fight. He already called and said, am I on April 10th? I said, if the doctor releases you.
Okay,
That would hurt.
and the 11th fight of the night was another title fight for the Steelwork Promotions 135-pound championship belt title. Adam Donovan from CMMA defeated Donnie Cavins from the Hit Squad due to referee stoppage in the first round due to unanswered ground and pound. Another great fight, Steve. You got 2 belts that night for CMMA.
Yeah, I was real happy with Adam. I know there was, again, a lot of unhappy people. Some of the fans of Donnie really felt that, they should let that go longer. And I even said, and I admitted, at the time, I said, they could have let it go longer. But it wasn't going to get any better. He'd already been mounted for 1 minute and 45 seconds of unanswered strikes, and there was 1 minute left in the round. So I really think that, especially considering what had happened earlier in the night, I think Dan didn't want to take a chance on somebody else because he was getting hit.
Oh, it was.
And he didn't seem to
it was
have
a
a
good
way
stoppage.
out.
I thought that was a
It
good
very
stoppage, too.
But I also understand from the kid's point of view, he wasn't hurt, and he was like, I could have gone longer, and I believe he could have, and I believe he had the heart to go
He doesn't
longer.
need to get hurt, though.
But
for it to
ultimately,
stop.
again, it is the referee's obligation to make that decision.
Yeah.
But was the fighter game enough to go longer? Sure, he was.
Hey, Steve and Pamela, we're going to try to get our next guest around these 2 microphones.
Absolutely. I'm going to step out for a minute.
Okay, Pam, if you could come back here and I got some for things.
Excuse
Yeah,
me,
but
guys.
could you stay
You guys
and
can
ask the
shift on
questions,
over.
TJ? Sure appreciate it.
Do we know if that one mic is working now, Andy?
Yeah, I think it's working some. You guys,
You gotta get kinda close to the
get kind of
mic.
close, because that one might be a little bit weak. Keep it close to the other one. Jim's going to sit there. If you could just stand behind or grab that chair and just hang out and chime in right in my mic. If you want, right here. In the middle. We got some new guests going to be joining us here very quickly here, very shortly here. Joining us from Farmington MMA is Jason Singleton. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you.
And joining us with Jason out of Farmington MMA is the #1 ground and, well, I gotta always say this, the ground and pound #1 ranked amateur 155-pounder in the, Western Missouri, Eastern Illinois region. Josh Weston, thank you,
We were
Josh.
just talking to Josh Epps on the phone.
But still
Yeah,
agree
that's-
with our ranking system.
And if I were to explain myself, I'm not well tonight. Welcome to the Ground and Pound Show. Really appreciate you being here.
Good to be here.
I think he was hands down amongst all the people we talked about, the #1.
Oh.
I think pretty much everyone voted.
No, that's a good point,
Pretty
Jim.
close. You saw the
I was-
tabulations, I didn't.
Yeah, I was given by the top promoters in the area, all the other promoters and trainers, and I went around and asked questions to everybody, and there was no doubt who should be #1. Your record alone justifies that.
Big target on you, Judge.
I'm getting used to that target feeling every time I fight now.
Yeah, I mean, ever since you've been something to know, I guess you've kind of felt like a target.
Yeah.
Somebody's, they want to beat the guy who's beating everybody.
Yeah.
So that's great. And you got a big fight coming up this weekend, don't you?
Yeah, I got one against the #2 guy coming up, so it should be real fun.
Okay, and that's Matt Ricehouse,
Yes.
and he's fighting out of Mike Rogers' gym.
Yes.
Have you ever seen him fight before?
I've seen a couple of his fights.
Okay. So what's his specialty from your, does he stand, is he more ground or is he more
He's a
stand-up?
jiu-jitsu guy is his main forte, so.
Okay. And for you, I know that you're very good on the ground, but you're also very good standing up. And I guess to be #1, you got to be well-rounded.
Yeah, first I was more ground, but I knew I had to get better at stand up because I can come from wherever I'm at on the fight and more. So it gives me more control and dictate the pace a little bit better.
Jason, talk about Josh and his training a little bit, his ethic there, and how things go down in Farmington MMA.
He's pretty relentless when he trains. I mean, from the time the bell rings, he goes at it just, pretty much as hard as he can. Now, when he rolls, I kind of get on to him because you're kind of set back and you want to feel, he'll put himself in situations where he can feel the submissions and kind of learn from them. Where I'm always like, what are you doing, Josh? What are you doing? We're kind of arguing a little about that, but otherwise, he's balls to the wall.